Welcome to Contragolpe in Inglés. This episode will be in English mainly because this topic needs to be mainly produced in Spanish because the topic could be a bit confusing for some of our elders. So today I will be discussing cultural appropriation. Yes, this very controversial topic for some, but do we really need to tell you why you should not appropriate someone else's culture? Considering native people all over this continent are fighting to preserve their accomplishments, their identity, and their ancient culture from culture vultures that are just hijacking Native American civilizations from Olmecs to Aztecs to our northern native brothers, our Mesoamericans, and even Aboriginals. That being said, we're going to talk to Frey. He's a native Nahua from San Diego that pretty much broke this very interesting story of a character that goes by the name of Teposhuitzli. I hope I pronounced it correctly. This individual appears in a music video by Cholo Goth electronic synth rock duo fronted by Rafael and Dave Parley, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I think they got a unique style going on, and yeah, I support that. So make sure you don't go away. You listen to this entire episode. I think it's hilarious and almost surreal in a weird way. So stay tuned. I guarantee you're going to be weirded out by this cultural appropriation story. But first, let's hear some of the music of this Cholo Goth band called Prayers. Letra profunda, some deep lyrics, y'all. Cuando quieran, estoy listo pa morir, pa morir, pa morir. Cuando quieran, you know what? It would have been cool if he would have replaced that and would have added abos, right? Like, cuando quieran abos, estoy... You know what I mean? I think it would have been a lot better. It would have fit the... Frey, what the hell is happening? What's going on? Who is this Teposhuitzli character? He looks like a hardcore gangster, cholo, Aztec, devil kind of thing he has going on. What is this?
I mean, for starters, right? What he's doing, he's basically grabbing a modern concept and an old concept, right? And he's kind of making a link between both of them. He's trying to connect that the modern cholo culture is a consistent, traditional society, a warrior society that can trace its lineage back to pre or post-colonial society, right? So that's what his narrative is. That's the narrative. He's saying that the Cholo culture is a consistent pre-colonial society that has never been, broken. Me as a history enthusiast, right? I'm able to kind of like see at first glance. I was like, okay, this is the like you said, if you only quickly glance at it, you will be fooled. But as later on, as you kind of tend to look at it more closely, you will kind of see, the how far-fetched it is and how he's kind of fabricating the whole idea. But it's a complete romanticization of our culture, and he's also kind of erasing a certain aspect around the the Cholo cultures or the culture or the Cholo society. Whereas if like he says in his video that I referenced, that I referred you to, that I was referencing when Prayers made the project of CHOLOANI, right? The YouTube video, he says that the Cholos basically fight off white supremacy, when in reality it's quite the opposite. If you are living within, those barrios and you're living in those and those kind of drastic factors and environments where you're living with cholos in firsthand accounts, I could also personally say that that's not how it's like. A cholo won't go to a white neighborhood and say, "Hey, you white dude, you gentrifier." They won't say that. They'll they'll be at each other's throats, brown on brown violence. So
Yeah.
that automatically dismisses kind of the whole narrative, and that just tells you that's just the whole romanticization.
Hold on for a second, Frey. Let's talk about that for a second. From what I know, correct me if I'm wrong. The word cholo is a modern adaptation to gangbangers, right, or gang members. Correct? I mean, because from what I understand, the word cholo is an Aztec word that has to do more like with the dog, the xoloscuintle. Because in Bolivia, also the word cholo means indigenous, which I'm not sure if there's a connection there.
That's correct. The origins of the word cholo is pretty much unknown. It's speculated here and there. There's some speculations and hypotheses, but there's no real concrete evidence to show that this is the origins of cholo. Some Chicano professionals who studied, Chicano studies, their conclusion is that it might have been from a variety of places. Some people think that, it comes from the dog xolo, the xolo squeakly, when squeakly means dog, but xolo means wrinkly, or ugly. So it could probably be from that kind of sense, that kind of aspect, or it could be from a colonial aspect where cholo was kind of a reference to a mestizo, but in a derogatory term, kind of like the N word.
So, Frey, I don't know how you feel about this whole thing, but to me, I'm not necessarily bothered that this person, Tepo Wheatsley, is dressing like a hardened gangbanger, or that looks like a hardened gangbanger, or that looks like a cholo. That to me is not that big of a deal. I mean, especially if the guy grew up around these ex gangbangers, because it's very common in our neighborhoods, right? I mean, growing up, I knew, and it wasn't a very weird or strange thing. You would see it often in Chola women too. For me, is that he went full shaman on us, and not only did he go full shaman, but he's rewriting history. I think if he would have come out clean, I think people would have been like, "Hey, well, who cares? Whatever." But the fact that he hid it, and the fact that he's appropriating our sacred beliefs and our history and our story, I think that's why we have an issue. And like, where did he get this name? Did he just make it up?
Yeah. It's a combination of three words. I actually have a voice recording of him explaining his name, how he prefers to be called Tepos Huipiltzin. And Tepos means iron because our ancestors, they had the knowledge of metallurgy. And Huipili is, of course, the dress that you'll see prominent within the Mexican community. That dress with the embroidery on their chest, or if you're familiar with danzas, you'll see the women wearing dresses that go down from their shoulders all the way down to their shins. That's a huipili. Now, the tzin at the end of it is a reference to nobility, or it's a noble gesture when you're referencing somebody who's of royalty. For example, Motokosuma, one of the second to last emperor of the Triple Alliance, empire, the Mexica Empire, right? His name is Motokosuma Koyotsin, Ahuizotsin, Nopalinsin, right? The prince of the first Chichimeca leader who migrated down into Anahuac after the Tolteca Empire, and so on and so forth. So he's kind of making himself say that he's from royalty, you know, and he claims to be Chichimeca when his name is Nahuatl and the language he is speaking is also Nahuatl. And for clarity, Chichimecas, they don't speak Nahuatl. They speak a different type of language that's not in the Uto Aztecian family. So my opinion is that I also don't feel kind of I'm not really disturbed because if someone wants to cosplay, we have bigger issues to worry about. So I kind of stay my ground. I stay away from that. But at the same time, when kind of made me kind of infuriating was that the same thing, the shamanism, playing fake shamanism. I'll even put my fellow relatives in check when they try to speak about medicine. So it's just that part. It's such a critical critical thing that you just cannot do within the Meso or the indigenous community all over the continents, because that attracts, or you're basically putting yourself in green light in simple terms, right? For the spirits, because they'll get really riled up and something terrible will happen, and that's something that's kind of known throughout, the whole continents, is that you don't mess with medicine. You really just don't. And then also to take it further is that he also took our culture and he weaponized it and he made it his tool to manipulate, women. And then that goes into, the whole sex cult aspect of his character.
Shoutouts to our friend Brenda Corral for bringing this to my attention, and she's the one that actually connected me with you. It seems like you know a lot. So how did you get this information?
Okay, so the way how I got this information, right? One time a while ago, about a year ago, when he started making videos and he came out with CHOLOANI, I called him out. Right? I told people, I was like, look, this guy, this and that, his regalia, his personnel, his language, it's all fake. It looks fabricated. And they gave them the benefit of the doubt. And somebody reached out to me a year later, which is like a couple of weeks ago. They told me, no, it was about a month ago. They told me that, hey, haven't talked to you in a while. So and so, this person is a fake, and I have nobody to talk to this about. And I didn't believe them. They told me they were part of their team. They were grooming women and went full on, disclosed everything, whistleblowed everything, and to the deepest part, of the whole aspect, right? Talked about grooming women, sexually, taking advantage over these women and everything, so on and so forth, and how he got injured. But at that time, when that person told me that he got injured, he wasn't posting about that. So that's what made me kind of dismiss the fact, or dismiss that.
Is Tepo Huitzpili part of Prayer's band, or is he just in one video?
He's not on the band. He's just I would like to say, kind of like a spiritual advisor for Prayers. He's not in the band, but Prayers, he always mentions him and he looks at him and he puts him in a high post and says that, oh, he's my shaman, he's a medicine man, this and that, But Prayers kind of supports him, because Prayers, if you look at the interview with him in Hoodstocks, he said that he provided the cameraman, he called his engineer, his sound engineer and everything, to get him cracking, and they had him in the studio already, recording that little chant that he claims that it's 30,000 years old, that chant.
So why don't we hear some of this chant? I mean, to me, this chant sounds like Northern Native, like maybe Navajo or maybe Lakota. But I'm just blown away at how this guy picked up the accent and the entire look. He got it down to the T. And if you look closely, if you put the video on pause, you could see his blue eyes. Let's hear all this mumbo jumbo that I'm gonna call them tepos. That tepos straight up made up.
Manel tlallalwi tlalpesjawi intlaltijpaj intlajocuali imoneki mochipa imoneki mochipa. After our people's enslavement and colonization at the hands of the Castilian Empire in the mid-1500s, and after the imposition of the scalp lock bans and laws which would disband the warrior societies, make illegal the genethlic warrior braid, forbid the practice of our language, our customs, traditional dances, traditional songs, and any form of our original and traditional expression of spirituality and way of life, under the threat of imprisonment and death, there was a small diaspora of our people, members of the disbanded warrior societies and their families, were not willing to bend the knee to the viceroyalty of New Spain and to the European monarchy, whom refused to accept the Christian God of their captors, whom refused to be assimilated into European colonial culture, refused to live as slaves and citizens of this foreign military occupation and colonial empire. This diaspora of our people were persecuted, labeled hostiles, and now filled the gallows and the cells, the colonial prisons and jails of New Spain for centuries, becoming in this new world renegades, outlaws, insurgents, now labeled criminals for refusing to submit to colonial rule and practice Western culture, now forced to live on the run. And thus, the Christianized and colonized members of our population.
I am not going to lie. That is pretty powerful. And boy, he put a lot of thought into it. I mean, he really knows, like even the pronunciations, man. I mean, I recognize some of the language, but of course, I'm not fluent enough to understand what he's saying fully. But this guy strikes me as someone that hung out with people that speak Nahuatl. But I mean, I'm blown away. I mean, by the look. But that chant, I mean, is clearly like wrong. That's northern. Correct? Actually, everything is wrong.
Yeah, he's saying that chant is Chichimeca, and that it dates back to 30,000 years.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody wants to correct me in the comments, go ahead and do so. But I mean, I don't know the historical timelines off the bat, but I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that's when the ancestors entered the Bering Strait, I believe. I could be wrong. I don't know.
30,000 years, which is...
So,
I mean, in this wishful thinking idea that somehow Cholos are revolutionary conscious people, nah, man, that's not me. Maybe former Cholos that come out of prison and, that airbrush Cuauhtémoc on the hoods of our 64 Impalas, maybe. But, yeah, not in my experience, man. In my experience, no revolutionary, if not run, dude, because they're going to beat you up.
Yeah, and then that's also the issue that he's trying to erase as well. It's not something that Cholos are revolutionary or that they're like our fighting, guardians to protect us from white supremacy. Even so, that concept long lost back in the 80s, with the whole, turmoil of the environment of Los Angeles with the cocaine and stuff like that. But, that's the issue he's kind of erasing. And it's basically saying, oh, yeah, we don't have an issue with our gang, with the gang community, hoarding on our kids or doing this kind of stuff. He's just completely erasing that.
Well, that is very sad. Like they say in Espanol, me da pena ajena. So let's back this up a little. So this guy is a wannabe shaman, and he has a network of people that follow him, and apparently he has millions of views.
He has a network of people who he basically already manipulated, and he's using them as a team, a network who, when somebody reaches out to him, he'll refer them to that team. He says, "Go with my brother, go with my sister. This is who you need to who you need to stick with for a while. They'll get you informed. They'll teach you about my traditional stuff, and in a way, basically saying, go over there with my side of the with my helpers, and they'll groom you. They'll go into a whole diet that I'll even send you a copy of later on, and he uses the diet to kind of like groom and kind of like weed out who's going to be the most dedicated to him." But yeah, he has a team, or he had a team that would groom women for him.
What, like some kind of super Aztec yoga recipe book or something?
And he claims that diet is traditional, and the team member who whistleblowed actually sent me a copy of that diet, and it's extremely it's fraudulent.
Yo, you should see my face. I'm super excited. I'm taking notes.
So the chichi meja, that way how he pronounced it, right? So basically, it's almost like a keto diet, except that you don't cook your food, and there's no vegetables involved. He specifically says that he prohibits the consumption of vegetables, and that you have to drink raw blood, raw meat, raw eggs, eyes of your captured kill, because he recommends you to go hunt for your own food. If you can't, you have to buy locally pasture raised, meat, and the most organic of the organic, right? The stuff you find at Whole Foods. And yeah, raw blood is one of the things you have to consume. And he says all these will help you unlock your spiritual
Your inner cholo.
no to basically enhance and heal your he calls organs transmitters, beacons, conductors. There we go, conductors. Since your body's energy, right? Your organs work as conductors, not as organs. So that diet will kind of help you repair all the damage by being a civilized man, quote unquote civilized man. It will help you repair all the damage inside your organs and your large and small intestines. It's dangerous. Oh, also he says no pharmaceuticals, no kinds of first world medications or supplements, nothing that sort. So if you have depression or if you suffer from bipolar disorder or if you suffer from panic disorder, and if you hop off of those medications right away and you taper the side effects, if you don't taper off those medications, like for example me Prozac, if I were to stop go cold turkey, I will have some pretty bad side effects, and my panic disorder will pretty much it'll be a whole mess. So that kind of already gives you another perspective of the whole story if someone was on the receiving end of this diet. And also he has a whole thing. He says you're supposed to eat the first. You're limited to 2 meals a day. The first meal, of course, is in the morning, right when the sun comes up, right? So it's like a sun glaze type of thing. And then also the second time you do it, it's either under the moon or when the sun is setting. So
Wow.
yeah,
Pseudo, man.
yeah, extremely pseudo. And you're not supposed to,
Pseudo.
and undercooked meat, raw meat, just straight bite the meat.
Pure pseudo. I'm sure my ex-girlfriend would totally follow this super cholo Aztec diet. How long has this guy been duping people for? And how did we just find out?
I'm not so sure how long he's been doing it for, but he's been claiming Chichimeca for about 6 or 7 years because there is a video of him. And I have a photo. I'll send you the screenshot of the photo he posted himself. About 7 years ago, he showed up on a podcast or on a radio show. I don't know. But he used to claim Lakota here, Plains Indians, so over here with our relatives up here in the U.S. He claimed to be Lakota, and his name wasn't Iron Jacket. His name was he named under the alias of Squasho. His
Wow.
name, and I looked at the podcast, which it's still up. It's still up on YouTube. You could go ahead and watch it. It's called Sovereignty something, and he's the first person talking. He presents himself, and he says his name is Quasho. And yeah, that was about 7 years ago. The date on the video, and yeah, that's him. It sounds like him. And also, there's a photo of him with the same, hanging around with the same group, because that podcast has a logo in that photo. You can see it's twice in depicted in the screenshot. So that's definitely him. He was riding with a bunch of Lakota people 7 years ago, and it's unaware how long he's been doing the whole Chichimeca, cosplay. He might have done another, identity, because he also claims to be, and I have a screenshot of him saying it himself, that he's a descendant of Kawana Parker. He's Comanche, and how come when he was spewing his stuff and his large following, how come none of the Parkers or none of the Iron Jackets? Because that's a really heavy bloodline right there. That's a heavy lineage that the Lakota and the Plains Indians hold as like powerful. How come none of them ever came out? How come he wasn't participating when they were doing a ceremony every year, an annual ceremony where the Parkers are always present in honor of Quanah Parker?
Were you in fact the first person that broke this story?
There were people questioning his teachings and his character. They were debunking it in the comments, or they'll make Facebook posts or just post, social media. But none of them really picked up, and all of them were pretty much dismissed because of his loyal audience. And the whistleblower, I wasn't the first one who they reached out, and it's a plethora of people. It's not just one person, it's a plethora, the whistleblowers. And so the whistleblowers, they reached out to somebody else, and his name is Quahit, and he recently said that he's going to step down because he received a lot of backlash. But I'm the one who basically kind of blew it up. My TikTok right now, currently at this time, has about 103,000 views on TikTok.
Wow.
And I kind of broke it down in like a 8-7 part series. on my TikTok, and I'm the one who basically broke it down, pretty well, and I didn't try to put in my opinion. I just worked as a vessel for the whistleblowers, to get that out there because of their bravery, for coming out. And I'm calling them the whistleblowers because, they told me that they want their identity to
Yeah.
be, concealed for security purposes and stuff. But
Ye-
yeah, I guess I'm the first one who kind of just took off with it and blew up with it. I don't want to take any credit. I do appreciate where credit is merited, but to me, all the credit comes into the brave team, the
Yep.
whistleblowers. Oh
But
yeah,
and
hypotheses.
One of the things that I find very infuriating and quite sad is that it seems like the Native American culture is the only one that can get appropriated and nobody will say anything about it. For example, there's a new movement within the African American community, that is essentially decided that they are going to erase Native American civilization and claim it for their own, like what they do with the Olmecs and what they do with all the native tribes. I mean, you see this everywhere now, and they have no evidence. It's all been debunked. The Olmec ancestors are still alive today, and that's a lot of us, right? That's you. That's a lot of my family members, and they're still there. They're still there, but and it doesn't matter what science says. They are able to appropriate it, and you can't say anything about it. And it's really sad that that's happening. I mean, this case is a white guy, and I don't understand why media ignores us and does not do articles on this. Like, you hear about this all the time, and there's articles everywhere about it. Oh, someone, appropriated this. Oh, no, it's a huge thing. But hey, you could totally appropriate Native American civilizations and claim it as your own. Not okay, and I hope it really stops because this is creating a lot of divisions within our community. And this guy, in this particular white guy, I mean, I don't understand also how he was able to get these gang bang tattoos all over himself. Like not only did he appropriate sacred tattoos, but he got, I believe it's Sureño on the back. Like he got really, I mean, he has real hardcore tattoos on him. And I don't understand how he got that and who gave that to him. I mean, maybe he's been in prison. I don't know. What do we know about this guy? Has he been in prison? Is he a hardcore gangbanger? I mean, what's the deal?
Exactly. Street credibility, right? The street cred. And I'm laughing and I'm smiling because it was just so hilarious when I discovered, and I actually did my own research on this guy. So he's from Florida, right? His name is Owen Thomas Phillips, and he's from Port Charlotte, Florida, which is on the west side of Florida. If you're not familiar with the geography, it's on the west side of Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico. And Port Charlotte, that's where he's from. Community, that's the demographic stats is like 75% white, almost 80 to 90, almost 80, like about mid 80s, like white with mixed with if you're going to include white Hispanics. And there's like zero of Spanish speakers in that area, even though the area is predominantly white, and that there is some kind of I like to what they say Hispanic or Latino presence. It'd still be a possibility he could still be Mexican, but those are the stats, and whatever your opinion is, roll with it. It's your opinion if you want to see him as white.
well,
I
maybe
personally do.
Has he said anything? Has he come out publicly?
No, but I kind of want to add on the whole street credibility part. I did a background check on this person, right? He's 31 years old, and he has an arrest record that you can look up publicly online. All this stuff is public information. Publicpolicerecords.org. You'll find his mugshot. That's where the mugshot that's flying around. That's where it is. And he didn't have the hand at that time, And that was back in 2010. He had a small weapons charge, and in the description it says that he was arrested because he didn't have a license and he had a little taser with him. And they threw him in jail in August and 2010, and he was out the same day on bond.
Oh wow, that was
Yeah, yeah,
wow.
and that's the only charge he has. He doesn't have no other record of doing a felony. He never went to federal prison. He only went to county, where he only just got put in a little cell, called mama or whatever, and they bailed him out, and that was it. So his street credibility is shot. He has no type of experience. He has been involved in no kind of gang war or whatever because he has never been to prison, actual federal prison, where you go to earn those tattoos, right? And he has yet to discuss what his gang is because if you're a gang member in a sureño, right, and SoCal, you would have, your clique or your gang or your barrio tatted on wherever, and then you'll get the Sur 13 tattooed, right? And I'm not going to go deep into detail on on those tattoos, such as the Black Hand or the Chimali, the Aztec Shield, so-called, that's what they call it, the Aztec Shield. If you know, you know. But those tattoos are earned, and they're heavily earned, right? And and with the fact that he never went to federal prison, there was no chance for him to earn those tattoos. So my hypothesis is that he just went to a random tattoo shop in Florida, probably, and just asked to get those things done. Asked to get them done, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, stolen valor at that point. But yeah, we could continue on with the rest of the thing.
I mean, the more I look at this video, the more I realize that he's mixing up many different cultures and in times, right, in civilization as well, because some of that almost looks Toltec. For example, he has that plate around his nose that's made out of, like, I don't know, maybe gold or copper. I've seen that in pictures of the codices in the different Mayans, right, that have, a lot of very intricate things on their head and around their face. Some look like helmets. There's a lot of stuff that's just jumbled up in his whole getup. And then he has the red war paint. He's trying to hide his, the way he looks, right? By adding all those tattoos and by putting that plate around his nose. You can't really see his face that much. He puts a bandana really low. But I mean, he can't hide them eyes.
No, yeah, definitely. And also where he lives, he doesn't he works in the sun, right? He lives in Zuni, New Mexico, and the sun out there, freaking hardcore, man, and it's dry climate. So he could be working on a little tan as well, that could also hide his features. But as you can see in his eyes, he has gray blue eyes, which is a phenotype of like one of the rarest eye colors in the world. Like about what 1% of the world has this kind of eye colors. But then just because of phenotypes, that does not dismiss him or make him less native, because there are natives out there who have those phenotypes. I'm just saying it's like under their circumstances, that kind of adds more fuel to the subject that he's not Chicano or native. But so the white passing natives, the light skinned natives, I think white passing is kind of hard, so I apologize to the indigenous community. The light skinned natives, they don't seek validation from nobody. They'll prove who they are, but they will never hide their features. They'll never do no kind of modifications or that kind of sort. They'll always say, and they'll always take accountability. They're like, yeah, look, I'm taking accountability. I am white passing. I am light skinned. Here's my ancestor. They'll probably show you that their ancestor was here and there, and then they'll embrace them. Because if you're a true native, you will embrace a fellow indigenous person. And I've seen some full-bloods out there who kind of have the white man's rhetoric, quote unquote, who are right wing. But then I also see some light-skinned natives, who's one of my friends personally, who's pretty light and extremely light. I see him more indigenous than some of those other full-bloods, because he's hardcore and he lives in the woods, and he's practicing his dances, his war dance, and he's like getting to know his culture and with more enthusiasm. So also his girlfriend, Tiffany Creamer is his real name. It's not Skonka Napa. It's actually Tiffany Creamer. And she claims to be Lakota. And I also have some screenshots, if you want to use, where someone says that they've been talking together, that she's met him for years. She has met Tiffany Creamer and spoken with her for many years, and that she modifies her body. She'll go ahead and she'll get a tan, or she'll dye her hair black, or she'll use eye contacts to kind of like to hide her blue eyes. She'll use brown eye contacts. So that also brings another red flag. So the fact that she's doing that, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So it could be him as well, who could be following that same philosophy. So the way he ran his sex cult, right, and his little cult in general, it's that And I provided an example with David Koresh and the Davidians, with the 90s, issue with them and the FBI and Waco, Texas. David Koresh and a lot of the other white supremacist groups, the key thing or the main concept that they use to run their codes is that they'll say something is coming, a big apocalypse. So you better be here rather than somewhere else. You
Yeah.
better be right here, right now. And me, I'm a messiah. I'm a messiah. And they picture themselves and they put themselves on this pedestal where they see themselves and they portray themselves as like some kind of supreme leader. And that's no different than what he was doing. He was telling people he was a shaman, and to groom these women, one of his tools and one of his wordplay was that women choose who they want to be with. They choose the men they want to be with. But I'm the only man that's capable to be chosen, and I am the most powerful being in this realm so far. And I have a screenshot of him saying that. That there's no one powerful or that's capable of being chosen by an indigenous woman traditionally, because he's the shaman. He's a head honcho. He's the top head of the totem pole. And women actually bought that. And there was there was a woman also in my comments in my Instagram page where she calls me all kinds of derogatory terms in my inbox. And of course she follows this kind of like a new age hippie, type of a Hinduism type of ideology. And she dedicated a post about me, and she said that, oh, look at this clown, social justice warrior, calling him out. We shouldn't be calling him out like that, because he's a real warrior, or authentic warrior. So at that point, if someone's that ignorant, that's time for me. The way how I was raised, if someone's that ignorant, it's time for me to kind of get up, step away, because I don't have the dopamine or the serotonin to be dealing with that. I have other things to invest my dopamine and serotonin to, because I'm not gonna ruin my day with something that's so small, and nothing's gonna happen at the end. So yeah, he was selling us follow that concept of being, supreme, or being a supreme leader, and putting himself on this pedestal is what basically kind of mimics a white supremacist ideology, because that concept is so common with other white supremacist cults like that. They're always putting people on a pedestal, that, or even with Hitler, saying that he's like the life and the freedom of that country back in World War II. So that was the kind of connection I was aspiring to make. The thing is that colonization has hit us differently, right? So our indigenous identity, right, our dynamics when it comes to our indigenous aspect of our culture, it's so different from the United States, from the American Indian, right? And the American Indians, a lot of them are close knit, and they know their history, and they have history keepers. For example, the Plains Indians, right? The Lakota, the Sioux, all of them within that nation, they have elders who kind of hold, the history and things, and traditions, and practices that are not shared with outsiders, right? So that's their dynamic, right? But when it comes to down south with Mexican indigenous people, is that it's not the same, Whereas the Lakota, right, they've been assimilated into the U.S. and this modern society like about 180, maybe 150 years ago. We've been dealing with colonization and the conquest and the conquistadores for the past 500 years, right, give or take. And so the thing is that we have suffered a lot of whips and scorns of the conquest and the colonization, to the point where the church has really um, tried to emphasize on erasing us. And over the generations and over the few next centuries and decades, we begin to kind of like assimilate and kind of drop our culture. Whereas all we know now is what comes off of books. Now, this is only for a selected few, because there are some people out there who do hold the traditions and do hold their customs, in certain pueblos, because they have been isolated, or because, they have just been, holding on to those things for generations and generations. But the majority, when it comes to that, when it comes to, suffering, colonization, and that aspect, it causes identity crisis. So, and not only that, also when our folks migrate from Mexico to the US, and the the parents will have some kind of, and this is relevant for me, where they'll have this kind of like Catholicist ideology where if the child will try to question his identity, say, "Oh, you're just Mexican, mijo," or "Oh, you're American now," or "Oh, you're this," or "Oh, you're that," just
Yeah.
straight, not being authentic. And
Yeah.
whenever, in my case, whenever I try to tell my mom, "Mom, where did we come from? Why do I have brown skin? What's the point of this?" They'll just say, "Oh, mijo, you're crazy," just dismissing.
Yeah.
And that alone will cause, someone to kind of spiral and start reaching for different things, and start claiming other cultures, or will just have an identity crisis and won't know who he is. And then they'll run to people like him because they're gullible. They have no sense because they just don't know. And I don't blame them. That's just how colonization is with us, and that's just how it is. And what we need to do is kind of tie up those loose ends so that way they could be immune to any kind of falsehoods or any false narratives. Because those guys and the American Indians, those who are close knit like that and who have been safeguarding their culture and who have really tight history, and their dynamic is so tight, then they're immune to that kind of stuff. They don't fall for it. For us, it's a whole different dynamic.
Well, hopefully Tepos responds. Maybe he's listening to the show, or maybe the brother from Prayers wants to say something. They're welcome to come on the show and talk about it.
I don't think he's gonna say anything. He already deleted his social media and everything.
I personally believe had this guy not appropriated the ancient part of our sacred religions and our traditions and our history, things would have been totally different. Like I said, for me, I don't really care if he dresses that way, if he wants to look like a gangbanger, or, also no disrespect to the cholos. Maybe I shouldn't say gangbanger. If he wants to dress like a cholo, that's fine with most of us, I think. I don't think we really care about that. And I think we've already talked about this. We've already made it clear. Our issue is when he decided to, become a shaman and start rewriting our history. It's not acceptable. It just isn't. And I hope that he understands that. And again, if anybody that's listening to the show knows more about the story, wants to come on, go ahead and drop a message and or send me a DM and let's talk about it. I know that I have really harsh opinions on this, but it is my culture, you know what I mean? And we put in a lot of work to defend whatever percentage of ancestry we have, But hey, man, I appreciate you being with us, and hopefully you could be on the show again.
Yeah, no problem, man. Appreciate it.
Man.
Yeah, right. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for being on Contragolpe. Make sure you like and subscribe, and stay tuned because I'm going to start producing more shows in English for y'all. Peace.